Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we have with us Mr. Shankar Aiyar, member of Rajya Sabha Congress, who is one of the most articulate voices of the party, and he has given a very elaborate dissent note on the goods and services tax proposed legislation, which was in a select committee, and as a member of the select committee, he gave a detailed note on which we will have discussion with Mani. Welcome to our show, Mr. Shankar Aiyar. So tell us, goods and services tax, which Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has pitched as the greatest tax reform since independence, and indeed is seeking a legacy for himself by getting it passed. It has gone through the select committee, and a lot of dissenting voices have emerged. Could you just explain to us as to what are the issues which have not been ironed out yet?
Well, first, I should explain that the dissent note is not only by me, but by all the three Congress members of the committee.
All the three Congress members.
Second, I agree with Mr. Jaitley that this is going to be a very, very major reform, because it will convert India into a common market, into a single market. And that could have beneficial effects. They could go up to 2%, as Mr. Jaitley claims. But if so, his having held up this bill for 4 years, from 2011 when we presented it, means that he's already lost us 8% of our GDP. Isn't that an indictment of himself?
Sure.
He wants to go down in history. He'll go down in history as the man who stopped the GST bill. Before it can go down in history as the man who promoted it. And he will not succeed in what he is attempting to do.
How much time did he lose? In 2011?
In 2011
BJP opposed
2015. We still don't have a bill. We'd have had a bill from 2011 onwards. That's why I say, if in fact there is a 2% gain on GDP year on year, then we've lost at least 8%. On compound interest, it's even more than that. So therefore, let him not try to cloak himself in virtue, when in fact he is responsible more than any single BJP member for having stalled the 2011 bill, which he now lauds. When he criticizes what amendments we've made, one of his major arguments is, but this was not a provision in the 2011 bill. So if he's become an advocate of the 2011 bill, why doesn't he just bring the 2011 bill and pass it? It's precisely because he's made changes in the 2011 bill that he has not been as pro-Mukherjee as he now claims to be, that we have him in this new zeal advocating the very bill that he opposed. Now, we've got a number of objections to it. Obviously, they're not of equal importance, but perhaps I should begin not chronologically, that is going through the bill clause by clause.
Begin with the more important ones.
Take in, I think all are important ones, but there are some that are perhaps more equal than others. One is that the Mukherjee bill provided for a GST dispute settlement authority. That has been removed from the Jaitley bill. Now, how all the disputes that will arise with respect to the GST will all be either connected with a state or more than one state, or with the center along with a state or more than one state.
This would have been an independent dispute settlement authority.
Now what Jaitley proposes is the GST Council will settle all this. Now, since the GST members are bound to be party to any dispute that comes before them,
how can they vote on it?
How can they be, since they are party to the dispute, how can they be a judge in their own cause? This is a violation of a most elementary principle of natural justice, which even a non-lawyer like myself knows, and certainly Mr. Jaitley knows it himself.
And in that, I think Centre has a 33% share and
that's
a
a
veto.
different matter. That's a completely different issue.
This is a matter of principle.
They do who settles disputes. And if that is going to be settled
to explain it more simply, Mr. Shankar Aiyar, if say Karnataka or Maharashtra are involved in a dispute, they would also be voting
That's right.
on that.
That's right.
So there is a conflict of interest.
There's a complete conflict of interest. And that's why it's a transgression of the first principle, of one of the first principles of natural justice, which is that you cannot be a judge in a dispute to which you yourself are a party.
So what alternative do you suggest? The one that
We've suggested just taking bodily the provisions with respect to a GST, Dispute Settlement Authority, from the Mukherjee bill and incorporating it in the Jaitley bill. And that has been adamantly refused. It has not even been discussed with us. Secondly, if you're going to have a common market for goods and services, then surely it should include all goods and services.
Sure.
Now, not all goods and services are noble. Therefore, I agree that alcohol is a sin good. But if you put in tobacco, as Mr. Jaitley has done, then what's his objection to alcohol?
Alcohol, yeah.
On moral grounds, I mean. Also under services comes prostitution. That has not been excluded.
Yeah.
So I don't think he has any right to ride the moral high horse. What he has argued is that we have said that the tax on alcohol will be reduced to 18%. That would have been the position if that would not have been the position if they'd agreed to the 18% ceiling that we recommended, which is a separate issue. I'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But we could easily have had a sin tax that is put on things that we morally disapprove of, or which for reasons of health have to be disapproved of. Then we could have had in the GST Council a decision that while the normal GST rate will be X, with regard to these sin goods, it will be, or services, it will be Y. Now coming back to the 18% ceiling that we recommended, in the literature that has been spawned subsequent to the Mukherjee bill, it has come out from the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy that if you were to have a revenue neutral rate, that is a rate at which the revenues of the government would be no different to what they are now, then the GST rate might have to be up to 27 or 28%. When the direct taxes are only 33%, how can a highly regressive tax like the GST, which every time it's imposed hits the poor consumer more than it does the rich?
Key criticism of the GST bill, that it's better not to have a GST bill than to have a 27% tax rate. And tell me, if my understanding is right, the Congress actually, in the case of GST, Congress is asking for a much more reformist bill. You are saying that the peak tax should not exceed 18%, right?
It's a hole in one. What you've just said is absolutely right. It would be far more reformist to say that indirect taxes on goods and services will be limited to 18% than to leave it open-ended, especially when all finance ministers will be seeking to maximize revenue, or at any rate to reach a revenue neutral state. And if that's going to be 27 or 28%, then the poor of India are going to have to pay more for a common market than the rich of India are. Is that fair? Is that just?
Sure.
So that was another objection. There was a constitutional argument that was trotted out. How can you have a particular rate mentioned in a constitution amendment? Well, our answer is two. Number one, it already exists. It already exists in an article of the constitution that relates to professional tax, where the maximum professional tax that can be levied is 2,500 rupees. So if you can have a figure, surely you can have a figure in another part of the constitution. Our second argument was that you are in any case proposing a specific figure. In the provision in the current amendment bill, which deals with additional levy, they said 1%, and we said that 1% is completely unnecessary and it's market, because it's market distorted.
Considering that you're giving states compensation for 5 years, that 1% seems unnecessary, right?
So at a time when compensation rates were not agreed upon, compensation was not agreed upon, there may have been some logic to this 1% additional levy for 2 years. But our proposal was that any revenue loss suffered by any state, whether it's a manufacturing state or a consuming state, all of these should be reimbursed 100% by the government for a period not less than 5 years. If that's accepted, there's no need for a 1% additional.
Exactly. If that is accepted, then this becomes redundant. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
But there is some politics to this also. Why did Jaitley oppose the 2011 bill? Principally because his mentor, there was a chief minister called Narendra Modi, you may remember. He was the chief minister of Gujarat. Gujarat was dead opposed to the 2011
even
bill.
now, they are the ones who are asking for this 1%
In fact,
additional
there was
levy,
a
right?
fascinating discussion we had with the Gujarat government. A lady civil servant, utterly brilliant, presented the Gujarat case against the GST in a most convincing manner.
Yeah.
And then the finance minister of Gujarat said, we are in favor of the bill. Pure politics. So therefore, they are
What
trying.
exactly did this lady from Gujarat, lady IAS officer,
Well, she presented it in terms of a manufacturing state which collects its own taxes.
It's a producing state,
and since Gujarat is a major source of manufacturers, like Tamil Nadu is, like Maharashtra is, these states who were producing goods had their doubts about it. The other thing that concerns me, or I think needs to be taken note of, is that the Punjab government did not submit any memorandum to us till the last moment. And at the last moment, the memorandum they submitted had lots of reservations with regard to the GST bill. In other words, the Akali Dal in Delhi is going to have to take a political call on whether it goes along with protecting the interests of Punjab as seen by the finance minister of Punjab or go against the financial interests.
Because I'm told money that Punjab imposes a purchase tax on food grains procured that come to mandi and and that leave the mandi, and they earn a few 3,000-4,000 crores from that. It's a major source of revenue. They don't want to give up that.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
In other words, the so-called Jaitley consensus has been railroaded. And if it were not railroaded, why did so many state governments come before us and express their opposition? This is authoritarianism, it's Hitlerism, trying to push this bill through in this manner.
Okay. We'll come back, Mani, after a small break. Please don't go away and keep watching RSTV. Welcome back to State of the Economy. We are having a conversation with Mr. Mani Shankar Aiyar, member of Rajya Sabha, on the goods and services tax bill and the politics behind it. So, Mani, you seem to suggest that a lot of politics is still going on around the bill, and as you said, even the allies of BJP are not satisfied. Gujarat government, as you said, still has reservations. So, what are the chances that this bill gets through in this session or the next session?
You see, it partly depends upon how unprincipled the BJP and its allies are. If they are going to protect their interests as they themselves have seen it, and as they have told our committee, then even BJP members should not be voting in favor of this bill. Equally,
Like
with
they
respect
didn't vote
to
for the land bill in the select committee, right?
well, that's a good. It's a good analogy to draw, but not a perfect one. Because we are no longer in committee, we are now to come to the Rajya Sabha. The allies of the BJP similarly have their reservations, and these reservations have not been completely met. So it's entirely possible that the allies will not go along with the BJP when it comes to the vote. But if the BJP makes this into a major prestige issue and says that the survival and effectiveness of its government depends on getting the GST bill through, then maybe for purely opportunistic political reasons, these BJP MPs representing those states in the Council of States, that's what the Rajya Sabha is, will abandon their fundamental duty to their own states and go along with what the BJP proposes. But more interestingly is the position of the AIADMK. Partly because theirs is a major dissenting note. In effect, they're saying no GST.
Big manufacturing state they are.
And they're saying no GST. And they have a substantial number of members in the Rajya Sabha. Even if they were to abstain, it will reduce the numbers that the Congress and its allies need to obtain in order to get 1/3 of the votes of members present and voting.
Okay.
So therefore, Jaitley is involved in a major exercise to woo the AIADMK into supporting his bill despite their reservations. And since their reservations are shared by the DMK, it will be a very awkward thing for the Tamil Nadu government to do, to overcome its own reservations about the bill and actually vote for it, or by abstaining attempt to help them pass the bill. Then there are other parties of the opposition which are normally in solidarity with what you may call the core opposition, but in this case, in the select committee, were not quite as forthcoming. I refer, for example, to the JDU and the Samajwadi Party. Now, how they will eventually decide to go along and give Jaitley his moment of glory, or to stay with us and deny him that moment of glory, is really a political decision that the BSP, the SP, the JDU, the JD will have to take. The solid opponents are the Congress with 68 members, the CPI and the CPM, who together have, if my memory is right, 11 members. So if only these three parties were to vote against the bill goes through. But if others come on board, as we expect them to come on board.
Even if these three vote against the bill still goes through, you're saying?
Well, it depends upon what the ADMK does.
Okay.
If the ADMK abstains, then it doesn't go through.
Okay.
But if the ADMK actually decides to support the GST bill, which seems a very far cry from their note of dissent.
Okay.
So therefore,
You're talking about Rajya Sabha, right?
I'm talking only of the Rajya Sabha.
Okay.
I'm talking only of the Rajya Sabha.
Yeah.
In the Lok Sabha, they have the brute majority to be able to bulldoze their way through.
So that means you're suggesting that there's still a chance that it might go through in Rajya Sabha, in spite of the opposition by Congress and the left parties.
I'm suggesting that in all probability it will not go through, but I am not willing to take a large bet with you that it will under no circumstances go through. It could go through, but the chances of its going through are much, much slimmer than of the bill not going through.
Because I'm saying this in the context of your article in IndiaTV.com, where the last line is, Jaitley may eat his heart out, but he's not getting this bill through.
We are not
Rajya
going
Sabha.
to it. No, in my latest column, I've said we shall meet at Philippi, which is reminding readers of Shakespeare's line in Julius Caesar, where Mark Antony says this to Brutus and Cassius, and goes on to win the war at Philippi. My assessment of the Congress position, I'm not a member of the High Command, so I can't guarantee what its position will be, and it is an evolving position, is that we are going to stick by our demand that first these people resign and then we will permit discussion. Let us see what happens over the next few days. I can't guarantee the outcome, but again I would say the chances are that Parliament would be far too disrupted to enable a constitution amendment bill to be brought into the Rajya Sabha in any circumstances.
Okay. Another point, Mani, that I want to raise is, as I said earlier, on GST, the Congress is actually arguing for a much more reformist bill, right?
Absolutely.
Legislation.
Absolutely.
But this is not coming through in Congress's communication with the media or with the rest of the.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to endorse what you've said. I completely agree with you that if you have a large common market with a moderate and reasonable indirect tax, that is a major reform, much more major than leaving everybody in the uncertainty as to what the GST rate could be when the figure is being bruited about, and that too on the basis of a serious academic study, that it could be pushing 30%.
Yeah. So are you saying, Mani, that are you making a claim that the Congress will support the GST if these 4 or 5 conditions laid down by
8 conditions
are met by the government? The government says we are ready to meet.
There's absolutely no sign. There was none in the select committee that they would be willing to come to an agreement with us.
So coming back,
I have left out the point about the panchayats. We don't any longer have 2 tiers of governance in India. We've got 3 tiers of governance. indeed 3 tiers of government in India. And there is a serious danger that particularly urban local bodies will be badly hit in their finances. And assuring the sound finances of the panchayats and the municipality is one of the duties of the state as laid down in the constitution. And that being so, we had asked that when principles of various kinds are being discussed in the GST Council, they should also discuss the principle of the local body's share in any revenue buoyancy there may be.
Yeah.
Even this elementary, extremely reasonable demand is not being looked at by the government. So since the government seems to say, my way or highway, well, we are also going to reply with, it's either my way or the highway.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Mani, the 2 or 3 big things that you are asking for, changes in the BJP's, Jaitley's bill, is number 1, you want to revert to the old Pranab Mukherjee formula of GST Council as a dispute settler.
No. The other way around. If you want to revert to the Pranab Mukherjee provision that there should be a separate GST tax dispute settlement authority.
Separate tax dispute settlement authority, yeah, an independent authority.
Yeah.
As opposed to
the current provision.
Where all the states.
Which is that the GST Council will itself decide disputes that are filed against itself.
Okay. And that, and of course 18%
and then the ceiling, then the inclusion of all products and services without any exclusions. Then there is a very important need to define the word supplies. Try and understand this is a highly technical matter.
Yeah.
A factory, well, a firm producing a particular product may have one component made in Punjab and another component made in Maharashtra.
It may supply to itself.
So when it's supplying to itself, does that attract a GST? The other thing is that if 2 or more firms are collaborating in the manufacture of a single end product, will they are supplying to each other without a financial consideration, amount to supplies or not? Now what the government have done is, they've set up 2 bureaucratic committees to prepare model legislation for the central GST and the IGST, that is the interstate movement of goods, and for the SGST, the state's goods and services tax. And these committees are defining the word supplies. Now it's absurd that without their knowing,
there is no consensus on definition of supply.
They don't know what supplies means. How are we going to pass a constitutional amendment which says I don't know the meaning of the most critical word?
But tell me, this independent dispute settlement authority would be headed by who? Would it be some independent?
In the original proposal, it was either by a justice of the Supreme Court or one of the judges of the High Court.
Okay, that would ensure.
That would ensure, firstly, judicial balance.
Judicial balance.
Impartiality. Second, it would have experts dealing with legislation, dealing with taxation.
And it will act as a.
And then people.
Acts as a counter to this brute majority that may occur in when all the states and centers sit together and vote.
The majority is truly brute, for the center has reserved to itself 1/3 of the vote, and given the states.
And they have veto power by virtue of that.
Well, they do virtually have that.
Because
and that was why
we require 75% voting.
They say that we have the right to a virtual veto power, but the states don't. And this is curious, given that at the present stage of evolution of our democracy, most states are governed by parties that don't agree with each other at the center.
Tell me, Mani, you said that Gujarat has always opposed GST. I also get the feeling that I have not heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi so far make any impassioned plea for GST.
That's why
or the virtues of. He has not spoken of the virtues of GST publicly. I have not. At least I have not seen any of his.
Well, have you heard him say anything except in praise of himself?
Does he really believe in GST?
Muh kholo. Yeah.
Okay.
So he is not saying anything over the last several days until he steps onto foreign soil. And he's certainly not engaging with any of the issues that have attracted public attention. Including the GST.
So let us hope that the Congress meets the BJP halfway on GST. Thank you.
We are not going to meet anyone halfway. It is for them to demonstrate in the case of the GST the kind of political wisdom they are apparently demonstrating on the land acquisition bill. And if the newspaper reports are true that they have decided to withdraw key clauses of the ordinance that they have been passing, then the question arises whether a land acquisition amendment bill is necessary at all or not. Why have an amendment bill if it's not going to deal with anything substantive? So I think both the land acquisition bill and the GST bill are in the penumbra of doubt. They have not come out of that penumbra.
Okay, so let's hope that some clarity emerges on these two. Thank you very much, Mr. Mani Shankar Aiyar, for talking to us. That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.